Episode 208, No Dig for Victory. This is the World Organic News for the week ending 6th of April 2020. John Moore reporting. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Folks, we are in a battle. More than that, we are in a war. Opportunity often comes disguised as adversity. The long decades of struggle against pollution, against Monsanto, against fossil fuels, and the mindless idea of continual consumption could be coming to an end. I do not see the suffering of this time, the infected and the deceased, as a positive thing. I sit in empathy with Mrs. World Organic News as she weeps during news reports covering death tolls and abandoned nursing homes and the incompetence of some responses. I am livid at the mindless bullshit spreading across social media. Let me put that clearly. The scientific community, the epidemiologists in particular, have been warning of a novel virus erupting through the human population since the 1918 influenza pandemic. We have been both lucky and saved by dedicated medical practitioners during earlier events. The Hong Kong flu of the 1960s, SARS and MERS earlier this century are such examples. Early cover-ups and attempts to hide reality aside, this was always coming. We are fortunate as a species that SARS-CoV-2, the virus which causes the condition COVID-19, has a relatively low mortality rate. The possibility of a novel infection with a 60% mortality rate remains a realistic proposition. Things are bad, they could be far worse. The measures instituted across much of the world, social isolation, ramping up of medical capacity, and the old-fashioned thing my grandparents and maybe your great-grandparents, for some of my younger listeners, knew well, hand washing, are the evidence-based responses we have at the present. Things are working, however slowly they appear to be. The current situation has shown us a couple of things. Firstly, the long supply chains in the developed world, many of which trace to the People's Republic of China. And secondly, the realisation that many people have no idea how to grow even a small amount of their own food. I'm not sure if you've seen them, but there are satellite images of the reduction in air pollution during the periods of lockdown. There are also images of the canals of Venice being crystal clear and wildlife returning. We have a glimpse into a renewable energy future. People, under the understandable fear of unemployment, are cutting back on anything that's not a necessity. That same fear has seen runs on toilet paper, flour, rice and dairy products. If you live in an apartment, this makes some sense. Hell, if you live in a house with available land, this makes some sense. But there are things we can all do for some degree of self-sufficiency. My favourite seed supplier, Eden Seeds, has had to suspend taking any new orders while they work through a backlog of 5,000. They hope to be caught up by Easter, which is next weekend. The world has significantly changed for many. That seeds are being ordered does not mean that people will be able to grow their own food, but they should be applauded for trying to, and they should be supported. Now that's where we all come in. We, as in you, my listeners, and me. We all have some ability, some knowledge at food growing. We can, and I would argue must be the leaders at this time. I don't mean leaders like Stalin, but more like a leading hand type leader, one who gets their hands in the dirt too. But how? I've thought about this for many hours during the last month or so, and I think we have a couple of ways we can lead this new back to the land movement, especially as this is happening in people's backyards. I'm sure most of you will know my favourite Bill Mollison quote, which I'm about to mangle. If only 10% of us move from consumption to production in our own backyards, we can change the world, or something like that. So how do we do that? We start growing our own food, however much of that we can, and this is the critical bit, we document it. By words, by pics, by audio, by video, by creating courses, by whatever means I haven't included in that list. This is how we help the people of the world, how we help ourselves, how we help each other. We don't have to be next door to each other to make a difference, but I do see neighbours looking after each other. And as we are scattered around the world, we can change the whole planet. By doing so now, we have the chance to bed down this way of feeding ourselves, our families and our neighbours, and to punch a huge permanent hole in global emissions that this situation has created to build long-term change for the better. The danger is, like after World War II, the Victory Gardens were abandoned as a reminder of suffering and hard times, and were replaced by the great ramp-up in developed world consumption. If we sell the idea of gardening, no dig gardening obviously, now, we can change the world one cabbage at a time, as the old World Organic News About page used to say. If you or someone you know would benefit from learning how to no-dig garden, send them or go yourself to worldorganicnews.com, and there's a form there to get a free copy of my no-dig gardening book. If someone needs a little more than that, I published a video-based course on Udemy last week, and with Udemy's practice of rolling continual discounts, no one should pay much more than $10 or €10 or whatever your local currency is for any course on Udemy. There's a link in the show notes, and getting to Udemy through that link means I don't snaffle half the price out of my pocket, so thanks in advance. You can also send people, or go yourself, for a re-listen to episode 207, where I discuss growing a quick response garden to get you out there and eating quickly. Remember, in this painful time, if we put in the groundwork now, we can all decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next week.